Hello, everyone. My name is Hildobby. I work at a venture capital firm called Dragonfly, where I run data. I do a lot of public goods, kind of data sets and dashboards. So you might have seen me pop up on Dune and in other places. And there's more of that today. So, just stay tuned. The promise of this talk is that central exchange data is actually very undersurfaced on-chain. And I want to change that. It's something that I've been working on for a while, but it's kind of culminating into something that's more ready to be used today, and I'm going to share more about it. First off, why? Why do I even want to cover central exchange data? What's the point? You know it is prominent, and you know it is an important part of the space, but there's other reasons. The first one being that it's actually core to other data sets that I use myself and have built in the past. One of them is wash trading for NFTs. So that's way back when NFTs were a thing and were blooming at the time. And looks rare and X2Y2 popped up and actually accidentally or not incentivized wash trading. And we needed to do something about it and actually surface those trades from the rest. And one of the mechanics I used is that I want to look at if two addresses that are interacting with one another, trading one another, are funded by the same source, and I want to flag those as potentially wash trading. But I do want to exclude all central exchange addresses because it is likely that two people are funded by Binance simultaneously. It doesn't make them the same entity. Then there's staking, where I'm trying to track every entity that is staking Ethereum. Most notably lately Coinbase, which I've been trying to track. But there's also Binance and other central exchanges that do show up in this data. And there's also ETF flows. You might know ETF flows from off-chain data. There's a lot of websites reporting on this data. I do it very differently. So if you look at this next slide over here, you can see that this is actually data from on-chain addresses that I'm tracking, looking at reported numbers and trying to find those addresses. So constantly sleuthing for new flows, where those are coming from. I know that it's going to be Coinbase Prime, that's going to be the custodian for BlackRock, for example. And therefore, if you build up enough heuristics, you can actually triangle which set of addresses do make up the AUM that they are holding for both ETH, but also for Bitcoin. And another reason is that I actually published central exchange addresses dataset a while ago. It was just a query I had on Dune, and I realized I had a lot of likes on it. Usually this kind of likes on a query is people farming likes or something on Dune. So that was surprising, but I guess it showed there was interest for it, which I was surprised, and I was also interested. So I thought I might as well, get into it. And lastly, this dataset has also been used in other places. So on Etherscan, when you go there and other scans, I don't know how you call them, you'll find some addresses are tagged and have this little label basically saying I compiled the datasets. Funnily enough, I found out about it because some people were getting rugged and tracing the funds. They saw that it was going to Binance and they got confused thinking I rugged them. So I got DMs about it, and anyways, that's how I found out that Etherscan uses my labels. So how do I actually approach this? The first step is to understand how central exchanges work on-chain. So I made a little diagram to try to break it down. If we focus on one central exchange address, let's call it the stereotypical central exchange address, you'll see some inflows from deposit addresses. Those would be the orange ones, as well as other orange ones, which can be smart contracts in some cases. Kraken, for example, uses smart contract deposit addresses, but others may not. And then you may also see, you will also see withdrawals to all kinds of addresses to the user's choosing, I guess. And then you also have interactions between addresses and one another. So let's keep this diagram in mind and go from there and see how we can actually gather this data set of addresses. If we zoom in on deposits themselves, there's a little more that goes on. There's two different types of fungible tokens. There's ETH and ERC20s. ERC20s, when you transfer them from an address, you're going to need some gas funding, hence the difference. Whereas if you actually deposit ETH, you can directly deposit it. You can already have the exchange, transfer it themselves because there's enough for gas, unlike ERC20s. So if it's an ERC20, you need an address to actually deposit some gas for the transaction, or it's a smart contract. Yeah. So I want to identify central exchange addresses. Let's look at the types and break them down into 8 different types. You're going to have hot wallets. That's going to be the ones users interact with for deposits, withdrawals, and all kinds of shenanigans. Cold wallets are going to be the ones that are used, I guess, for internal purposes, and usually to keep funds on secure wallets that aren't being actively used, and for safekeeping purposes. Then there's gas suppliers, like I said before, for when you deposit ERC20s, you're going to need to fund those deposit addresses. And then there's excess gas recipient. Sometimes, you often overestimate the fee, and that way you got a little bit left of ETH in deposit addresses. It's dust amounts, but many dust amounts pile up into a lot of amounts, so you got to eventually send that through back to your address. You also have addresses creating contracts, so that can be deposit addresses, but other purposes as well. You have those executing the contracts, usually for consolidating deposits. You have wallets used for rotation purposes. So this is, funds don't stay long there, but just one hop into a series of hops. And then you also have central exchanges having their own deposit addresses, either for their own exchange or on others. So Binance will have deposit addresses on Coinbase, vice versa, and those are also worth tagging. It's not a perfect world, of course. There's a lot of things to watch out for. Sometimes you'll have random connection that seem to indicate that a central exchange address is tied to a node of central exchange addresses, but that's not always the case. So of course, it is prone to some mistakes. There's also cases where central exchanges are just a single node and are self-sufficient on deposits and can therefore supply withdrawals from this and have no connection to the rest of addresses. Those are also harder to, phase out from the rest. And finally, there's also deposits that are never consolidated for all kinds of purposes. Maybe it's too small of a deposit, or I don't know, many other reasons. I don't work at a central exchange, but it's just assumptions here. So how do I actually approach it, and how do I go on Dune? I have a bunch of queries where I put together heuristics based on the things I showed you before. So we know the patterns to look out for, and I compile those lists, and if I have 2 or more sets of heuristics that match and lead to a central exchange address being, Coinbase or whatever else, then it is highly likely, and I'm going to tag it. I also have these hyperlinks. What you'll see is that those are Etherscan, Nansen, Herd, GitHub, and Arkham. Those are all explorers that I use, so I can just click and actually go through. I'm very often going to use Arkham, amazing platform to track transfers. GitHub is awesome for smart contracts because that's where devs have their documentation and tag their contracts. Herd is awesome to go deeper into how the contract actually work, and so on. And Etherscan, Etherscan, Nansen, whatever. Like I said, it's a data set that I've been compiling for a while. So the list of central exchange addresses I started in July 2022 when I made NFT wash trading, but I've actually been constantly adding more and more, and even more as of late. There's a few contributors, but I have contributed the overwhelming majority. And the black bars and the little slim things is the other contributors, but I welcome everyone to come and contribute, submit a PR on Dune, and tag me so I can review and actually make sense of why you tag this address, because you can't, it doesn't make sense to just tag anything and let anything go. Obviously, we need some checking. Once we have central exchange addresses, we can actually extrapolate more data sets from it. So you got the manually tagged addresses, and then this is for applying for all EVM chains, and for every blockchain, I have a data set where it checks when those addresses first receive any transfer and tags them accordingly and eventually consolidates into a dataset that has all these addresses at a blockchain level. So you're going to see, some addresses pop up on multiple chains because they are used across different chains. And then once you've got central exchange addresses, there's two more things you can pull from this. Central exchange flows, so this is all interactions, all transfers in and out of those wallets between one another and all other kinds. And there's also deposit addresses, which are very prominent on our blockchains, but like I said, undersurfaced. Oh, and like one little Dune tip, if you ever use Dune, watch out. You can use the cross-chain table, but if you want more efficient querying, please use the blockchain-specific ones if that's all you need. Just a little FYI, I guess. This is how I tag deposit addresses. We can actually pause and take a look here. On a high level, I'm looking at the first time central exchanges receive any token from any address. So the first funding from any address, I extrapolate that one day forward, look at all the same tokens being sent, because people will do test transactions and all kinds of things. You need to account for those. And then once I have the maximum, like the last time within that time frame that it was deposited, from there I look back into when people actually deposited. It's a bit complex, but if you want to take a look, I'll upload the slides and you can also rewatch the video. But yeah, and you can also inspect the code, of course, but I'm fairly confident in my heuristics, although I'm very open to anyone coming to change that and submitting changes to it. I actually also have started to do some sanity checks. I'm not going to go over all them too much, but essentially checking that the amount consolidated closely resembles the amount deposited, because otherwise, if you see huge spikes over there, it'll be really weird. And then in terms of transfers, central exchanges are going to be more efficient in the way they transfer things than users are, because like I said, test transactions, there's also some contracts sending fees regularly to deposit addresses, and then the central exchange only consolidates once in a while. So anyways, to what I was looking for, this makes sense with what I was expecting, and it's one of the other semantic checks that I won't go over here because there's many things you could look at, and I'm always, like I said, open to feedback on the data sets and constantly iterating on it until everyone's happy with it. The actual data is probably what you're here for. So there's 4,300 addresses and 92 million deposit addresses, and I've tagged 350 central exchanges. Of course, it's an unknown how many there are that are missing, but like I said, I welcome all you to come forward and let me know. In terms of data, the data we get is actually pretty cool. So here is the deposit volume across all exchanges, across, I would say, 5 of the major chains, being Ethereum, BNB, Base, Arbitrum, Optimism, and a few others. And here, for example, you can see, the FTX fallout in gray, where Coinbase gobbles up a bunch of their users, I guess, and takes on market share. You can see the Poloniex story, you can see HTX, and all these are at play. And you can also very prominently see Binance swallowing the whole market. So yeah, interesting data. Like I said, this is just a high level, but you can dive into it. All the data sets are available for you to look at. In terms of where the deposits actually happen, the cool thing is Ethereum is still doing great in that category. It's lost a little bit of market share to other chains, a little bit to BNB, and then some layer 2s, Avalanche. But that is more on the transfer count side. But if you actually look at the size and the actual volume, it's mostly settled on Ethereum itself. In terms of how much do central exchanges use in terms of blockchain capacity? I thought that was another interesting thing to look at. And you can see that in terms of transfers, it used to be 30% for ETH, but it's actually been going down. The thing is, it's not really relevant to look at transfers because as time goes, more transactions include more and more transfers and things get more complex, especially as DeFi pops up and other things. So if you look at transactions themselves, you actually see that we are more stable, and we're at around 25% of all transactions on Ethereum involve central exchange addresses. So I think this goes back to the point of why are we even looking at this? Because it's prominent, and we should look at things that are happening on the blockchain. It's prominent across other chains as well, but due to the tooling and everything available, Ethereum is going to be where I'm more confident in terms of tagging and addresses I can sleuth for. And it's also, like I said, where most things are happening. In terms of fees, it's also very prominent. Now, it is important to note that this is only the fees that central exchanges themselves put on. In terms of deposits, so here you can see there's 10%. 10% of all fees paid on Ethereum are paid by central exchanges. But if you actually look at this one, this is just deposit from users. So you can add 5% more that are users depositing into those deposit addresses. And there's also some non-insignificant amount for other blockchains that, obviously, there's, like I said, this unknown, maybe it's higher, but maybe we go up from here as we tag more. Another interesting use case for this data set is, as a data scientist, one of the big problems is there's a lot of spam on blockchains, and it's actually hard to discern spam from the rest. Therefore, by looking at deposits that are being consolidated by central exchanges, I do feel like it's some kind of confirmation on the token's importance relative to the rest. And therefore, this is a simple list that just looks at inflow volume all time and ranks the tokens. So you can have some threshold and actually only look at certain tokens and remove all the, spam tokens and other things that you don't want to look at. So yeah, this is just a proof of concept idea, but I think this can be taken further and hopefully get some, heuristics-based, really good ranking for tokens that we crucially are missing, and manually tagging would be an insane amount of work given, the insane amount of tokens that constantly pop up on chain. How are addresses funding on blockchain? Well, on Ethereum, there's over 85% that are funded by addresses that I've tagged as centralized exchanges. My assumption is that the rest is, of course, funded by one another as people, move their funds and all of the kind of things. But there's also bridge transactions that is another piece of the puzzle that's missing. And yeah, so it's an unknown, I guess. But what this gets us is that now that we know from where addresses are funded, we can actually look, and each of you building your protocol can look at your certain KPI, put that into a dune query, and then look at where those users are coming from to better understand your audience. You can also see, if it's funded by Binance US, you can actually see, well, it's probably a US user, and there's more you can get out of this. But my goal here is to showcase that you can make your own query and look at better profiling your users and hopefully better targeting them and understanding their behavior. And I think that's a part of the whole. We're used to, analyzing DEX transactions, but I think this should be just as important to everyone building protocols over here. Another interesting thing, it's a little adjacent to central exchanges themselves, I guess, or at least the centralized aspect of centralized exchanges, is that, I don't know if you've noticed, but lately, Binance Smart Chain has taken all the DEX volume. I'm not sure if that's something you have, maybe even seen somewhere, but I thought it was important, and I was wondering why. And the whole reason is Binance recently launched called DEX on CEX. I don't know what would be the technical term, but essentially users on the Binance app can now go and trade decentralized exchange tokens, and Binance will do the bundling for them and route the transactions. So there's been a lot of volume coming on BNB as a result of this. You can also expect that other centralized exchange will step into that space eventually. I think it only makes sense, especially if you consider that tail-end tokens are much harder to list for. so you might as well use the on-chain liquidity and pools that are readily available. Of course, it has a side effect. The more there's tail-end tokens being bundled, it also leads to a lot of arbitrage transactions. And that's another dashboard I've put together a while ago on MEV and arbitrage. But essentially what I'm getting at is having more of these DEX on CEX transactions has also binary, like secondary effects that also cause most transactions, such as arbitrage. Hence why there's such a significant jump in their volume, which should not be taken lightly. And yeah, interesting data. There's more things for centralized exchange coming. Yesterday, Robinhood announced essentially their stock tokens on Arbitrum. I think that's another part of the whole centralized exchange kind of category that we should look at. I'm very curious, and I'm going to start, looking at who's trading OpenAI on Arbitrum, I guess. Yeah, interesting things to look out for. All these data sets you can query for free on Dune. This below is a link to a dashboard that I have where I've tagged a bunch of data sets that I think are relevant and are cool, and you should consider trustworthy if you trust me. So yeah, this is the list for centralized exchanges, but of course there's more there for you to look at. There's also a dashboard I've put together on centralized exchange flows. It's mostly charts I haven't shown here, actually. So yeah, go take a look. hildobby/CEXs. Yeah, a bunch of data, and I'll keep adding to it. I'm open to feedback. Please do share some feedback. Please do DM me if you have anything that you think is interesting. And also, like I said, the DEX on CEX category, or whatever you want to call it, I think is here to grow. So I started also putting together a dashboard on this for Binance, but later on, who knows, most probably other exchanges. Yeah, here's the share relative to the total DEX volume. So it is a prominent amount relative to the total, and I can see it growing from here most probably. But of course, there's more to find. It's an imperfect data set. No data set is perfect, but this one is not either. So if you have any feedback, I've left a QR code for you to scan, and it's a form where you can give me any info. So that could be, there's a centralized exchange and you feel underrepresented, please come forward, I'm happy to tag you. You're a blockchain and you feel like you should be more prominently shown relative to the other blockchains, same again. Or even just a hunch of like, well, this doesn't feel right, this doesn't feel like Binance's number, they should be much higher. Anything helps, so please come forward, please send me all your feedback. So far, it includes all these blockchains, but of course, there's space for more. I think the EVM space is only growing, and my goal is to focus on EVMs. But of course, there's other ecosystems to look at. There's Bitcoin, there's Solana most prominently, and then there's a bunch of others. If you are from one of these ecosystems and are really knowledgeable on how those work, how central exchanges work on those, please come and help. I'm really happy to have you as a contributor and guide you into contributing to Dune Spellbook to make this a really good place. I'm not going to be able to track everything forever. Eventually, my goal is to have a really, really solid seed data set that can hand off to some AI that crawls the blockchain, finds heuristics, and essentially is self-sufficient into tagging. That's good, that's looking forward, but at the pace of which AI is growing, who knows, it could be, we could be weeks away. I have no idea. Huge shout out to Dune. This is obviously enabled by that platform, by Spellbook itself, allowing me to create data sets, which anyone can. And yeah, so a huge shout out to them. It's really an awesome platform. I guess I'm biased, but yeah, I don't know. Arkham is also an awesome platform, and I've used a lot for not only cross-checking tags, because they have a lot readily tagged, but also because transfer-wise, it's really, really interesting, and it's perfect for actually tracking central exchange, because most of what you want to see is token transfers, and you don't want to see all the rest, all the fluff that you're going to see on Etherscan, which are good for other purposes. But in this case, Arkham was the better choice. Lastly, also, I actually got my start at a centralized exchange data company a while ago. So that was in 2019. You can see I was put into a cardboard form in my very professional attire at their office. So if you see this there, that's me. Please come say hi. And thanks to all of Kaiko to actually putting me on this path. And you know, it's how I got how I got started in crypto and how I got even interested in the first place. Next up, of course, I'm always looking for new things to analyze. There's still a lot more to do on centralized exchanges, but there's another big piece of the pie that's missing. And I'm looking for any help. I'm looking at bridges, interop. It's a hot topic at the moment. My goal is to compile all deposits and all withdrawals into a single data set. So you can not only look at volume and everything, but also latency. You can look at which are intense protocol, which are not, and all these kind of nuances. So yeah, there's even CEOs fighting on Twitter for which has the better interop protocol. So maybe we can help them by providing data to, back up their arguments. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed my talk. If you have any questions, please come forward. I'd love to hear.
I actually have one question regarding the Binance decentralized centralized exchanges thing, routing. Is it happening specifically on PancakeSwap? Because on our end, so I'm from Kaiko, we have seen that the volume on PancakeSwap significantly increased recently, and so this is maybe related.
I haven't looked into which of the dexes it is precisely. My guess would be PancakeSwap because I think for tail-end tokens on BNB, that's where most things happen. And the goal here for Binance is not to route for the larger tokens. Those are already listing and are going to have much deeper liquidity on the Binance app itself. So my hunch would be that yes, it would be PancakeSwap, but I haven't looked into it too deep.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, no, well, thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed, and please come forward if you have any more questions. Feel free to reach out on Twitter, Telegram, or anywhere else. Feel free to use my datasets and provide feedback on them. Thank you very much.